Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management webinar today. I'm Priya Kumar, Security Technical Specialist at Microsoft, and I have with me my teammate Shay Hawajobi, Security Technical Specialist. So today we are going to discuss how our Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management solution can help contain insider risk. So when we talk about data breaches, we usually focus on external threats and cyber attacks. We focus less on data exposure by everyday employees. With more than 300 million people working remotely all over the world and collaborating across multiple environments and devices, data security incidents can happen anytime, anywhere. According to statistics, 83% of organizations experience more than one data breach incident in their lifetime. Among all the data breaches, 20% of them are due to internal actors with an average annual cost of $15.4 million. 90% of employees admitted to undertaking unsecure actions, knew that their actions would cause harm to the organization, and did it anyway for speed and convenience of work. To appropriately protect your data, you need to understand the user factors around it. So organizations face a broad range of risk from insiders, like conflicts of interest, insider trading, and fraud. We also have workplace harassment and workplace violence, which spoils the morale and creates a negative working atmosphere for other employees, which in turn might lead to an insider risk incident. There is usually a pattern for employees who involve in data thefts, and it might start with something as simple as security violations and policy violations. So, identifying these risks at the beginning helps establish the intent and monitor the user for suspicious activity. Many of these potential risks stem from the two specific areas of concern: data theft and data leakage. Data leakage can be malicious or inadvertent, but data theft is a deliberate action of removing data from the environment. Now, let's take a look at a real life insider risk incident. So, Jane Doe here worked at company A during 2012 and 17 as a principal engineer for global research. That gave her access to critical trade secrets. Before departing from company A, she opened files containing trade secrets on her computer and took photos of her desktop to bypass the company's security measures. She also transferred other trade secret information to an external hard drive. After leaving company A, she joined company B, where she was employed until 2018 as an application development manager. In this role, she had access to the same area of trade secrets as the previous organization. So, shortly before the end of her employment, she uploaded trade secret documents to her Google Drive account. During her employment in both companies, she planned to share the trade secrets with a foreign corporate partner and start her own company. In the end, she was convicted of conspiracy to commit economic espionage, to steal trade secrets, and wire fraud. And it was alleged that the trade secret information cost almost $120 million to develop. So, this case signifies the importance of having an insider risk management solution that would identify hidden risks, such as this one. So, the data incidents, as we mentioned before, it can be both inadvertent and malicious. Now, let's compare the activities of two different users here. User A here received a confidential file via email and shared a copy with a few of her colleagues. It creates the issue of data exposure where many users got access to the file. Not only that, but also the files got duplicated into multiple copies, which increased the risk further. She then uploaded a copy to her Dropbox account to skip the access control from the company's SharePoint policies. It could potentially lead to a data leak incident if the vendor doesn't have appropriate data protection policies in place. Lastly, she downloaded a copy of the file to her device to work offline, again creating duplicate copies of the confidential file and the copy becoming out of reach of the company. All these inadvertent actions could be happening every day in an organization, causing data leaks. Now let's take a look at another user here. User B here downloaded unusual volume of confidential files from SharePoint and deleted those files. This user then sent one of the confidential files to her personal email address, uploaded two to her Dropbox account, printed one, saved three to USB. It's like a typical low and slow data exfiltration behavior attempting to steal confidential information under the radar. It's one of those hidden malicious risks that is very hard to detect. We see that both these users downloaded confidential files and share the files, but we differentiate the intent of these users by correlating their previous and current actions to determine if it was inadvertent or malicious. So now, organizations currently are addressing people-specific risks manually, mostly solely relying on solutions like data loss prevention when they don't have a solution like insider risk management. Here is one example of the practice. So traditionally, the security team starts with collecting a list of users who are about to leave the company and then look into the logs alerts to see if the user sent any emails to any external emails that look like their name. If yes, then the security team manually add those users to multiple DLP policies to contain the risk. You can see how much manual effort it takes to the security teams to catch risks like these. The hit rate is high, but it only focuses on one channel, that is email, and one scenario, that is departing employees. So it could be very, very ineffective. So that's why we have our Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management solution, which is a machine learning enabled solution that helps organizations intelligently detect and mitigate the most critical risks. We establish intent and context for the insider risk incidents, thereby reducing the number of days it takes to contain the risk and the associated costs. To effectively identify insider risk, one must be able to quickly reason over a sequence of activities which, when correlated together, signify heightened risk. There are three key benefits of using insider risk management. First one is privacy. So when organizations consider using insider risk management, they are worried about user privacy. So one of our solutions for enabling user privacy is pseudonymization or anonymizing the username. This not only protects the privacy, but avoids conflicts of interest and bias. So, for example, it prevents a scenario in which the admin is conflicted on what to do next when they see a friend or a teammate's name in the alert. Second one is simplicity. So many organizations purchase multiple solutions to correlate the signals and identify insider risks. For example, we saw in the previous slide how organizations manually manage risk when they don't have a solution like insider risk management. With Microsoft Purview Insider Risk Management, organizations can detect hidden risk with powerful machine learning models. Third one is acceleration. So once the insider risks are detected, it could be really time consuming to investigate before taking any action. So insider risk management provides enriched and interactive investigation tools to help security team understand the user activities, view exfiltrated content, and get forensic evidence easily to expedite the investigation. Most importantly, these machine learning models in insider risk management helps enable adaptive protection, which enforces the most effective DLP controls on users with elevated risk level to help mitigate the insider risk early on before completing the investigations. So it's important that we have the right people with right access at the right stage to complete the investigation. So there needs to be a seamless, collaborative, and easy way to navigate. And insider risk management provides that for the teams to complete the investigation. So the legal team takes care of compliance with employment law. The HR team maintains a healthy workplace and a workforce. Security team makes sure they protect their information and infrastructure. And the compliance team makes sure they are in compliance with regulations and policies. Okay. When it comes to protecting data, many teams are still using data loss prevention program, and it is important to distinguish between DLP and site risk management. And we have mentioned data loss prevention in our presentation too. So DLP blocks based on content and context. For context, DLP protects sensitive data in use, in transit, and at rest. DLP is intended to enforce policies on specific content and data that has been identified in a policy rule. Finding the right level of DLP management can be a challenge. On one hand, we have sensitive data that needs to be protected. On the other hand, we have to support the business and productivity too. So having too many false positives can be tricky for security and data protection. So Next is insider risk management. So, insider risk management looks at patterns and history of the user and correlates multiple instances to identify intent. It helps identify the typical low and slow data exfiltration, and communication compliance takes it a step further and identifies potential risky user communication like harassing language, profanity, code of conduct violations in messages. So DLP policies focus on the data, and insider risk management policies focus on the people who move the data. So protecting your data isn't an either or with DLP and insider risk management. Rather, we recommend augmenting your DLP strategy with a proactive insider risk management solution focused on detecting and addressing insider risk that may not be addressed with a DLP solution. Now, let's move on to a demo, and Shay will take us through the portal to show insider risk management demo.
All right. Thank you so much, Prayer. Now, I'm now going to head over into our compliance portal just to walk you through all that you can do within there. As you might see, as you might know, Microsoft Purview is your one-stop shop for data security and governance. In this portal, you're able to classify your data, label your data, apply DLP policies, and also, of course, apply retention policies. We've had a few webinars addressing these components, and we will be sharing a link to those in the chat. Today, we will be focusing on insider risk management. Now, when we think about IRM or insider risk management, our goal is to help our customers effectively and efficiently manage risks by empowering them to identify, investigate, and act on both malicious and inadvertent activities in your organization. Today, I'm going to be working with two dashboards because just to give you kind of richer insight. When you click on Insider Risk Management, you're welcomed to this, beautiful dashboard that is giving you a bunch of insight across your organization. But there are a few things and a few settings that you need to turn on to be able to see this type of insight. So I'm going to go into our Insider Risk Management settings and show you what some of those are. So let's toggle to the next dashboard here. Click on Insider Risk Settings. And like I mentioned, there are a few of them, but we would only be focusing on some. The first, which will be privacy. Like my colleague had alluded to prior, we mentioned that when you're creating with insider risk management, we want to make sure that you're able to enforce privacy. Meaning, if, for example, I have a friend of mine that is doing something malicious and I'm seeing an alert in the dashboard, as someone who is doing that investigation, because I'm seeing my friend's name, I might choose to dismiss that alert and say it's nothing, right? We want to make sure we can prevent those scenarios, and that is why we're giving you the option to anonymize the usernames of your employees or the people in your organization. You can of course turn it off if you please. The other setting that I'll call out here are the policy indicators. And these are basically the activities that you want us to pay attention to that we can then categorize to be an insider risk or determine that a user is performing an insider risk. So, for example, we can look at indicators within Office 365. If someone is suddenly downloading content from their OneDrive account and then deleting those SharePoint folders or sending files or folders outside of the organization, right? These are things that we want to pay attention to and use to define that a user could potentially be an insider risk. We can do this across devices, across risky browsing session to identify risky browsing sessions, Defender for cloud apps, meaning third-party cloud applications, and also, of course, health records. You can also create a variant of these indicators. A lot of times customers would ask, how can I reduce the number of alerts that I'm getting, right? One way to do that is to create an indicator variant. And what this does is you can say, if there's a team in your organization that typically would send attachments outside of the organization, right? You can create a variant and assign that group, that team or that group to that variant such that we can exclude them from the policy and thereby reduce the number of alerts that you're getting, right? Those are the types of the scenarios that you can work with indicators. Another thing that you have the ability to do with insider risk management is the ability to create, to bring your own detections. So say, for example, you have Salesforce or you have some other third-party solutions that has sensitive information in them. And you want to be able to determine when people are downloading those sensitive data from these third-party solutions. You have the ability to bring your own detections. As of yesterday, during Ignite, we have also made it possible out of the box for us to detect insider risk across Azure, AWS, Box, Dropbox, Google Drive, etc. So that's something that is available out of the box. You don't need to do any types of additional connections for that. So that is that with bringing your own detections. Now let's talk a little bit about some other settings here. This is policy timeframes. For this, what we are saying is if, for example, someone does a malicious action today, how many days after today do you want us to keep looking at and monitoring their activities? You can say 30 days or less. You can also say you want us to go back a few months or a few days to see what other activities as this user been doing before we actually categorize them as an insider risk, right? So you can kind of toggle back to see the past activity detections, right? So that's another thing that you have the ability to do. The final setting that I'll call out here is analytics. And this is something that we absolutely recommend that you do because doing this helps us do an holistic scan of your M365 environment, looking at the audit logs so we can give you that initial data to determine the health of your organization from an insider risk standpoint. With this information, you can then start creating some insider risk policies. So let me show you what that looks like really quickly. And I'll toggle back to the other dashboard. So here we have some insights, but if we scroll all the way to the bottom, on the bottom left, we see insider risk analytics. When you turn on that analytics piece, here is what it gives you. You can go ahead and click on that, and it gives you this rich insights. All of this is without creating any policies. As you can see here, you're able to see that, 1.3% of users performed exfiltration activities. That is risky, that is suspicious. But another thing that you see is 5.9% of users with the resignation date have performed exfiltration activities. Like my colleague mentioned earlier, the key difference between DLP and insider risk management is the person, is the activity or the insight that we're generating for the user specifically. And in this case, this user has resigned, they've probably been terminated, they're on a performance plan. Those are the types of things that would differentiate a DLP role from an insider risk management policy. We can see some additional insights at the bottom. For this, we can go ahead and click into it to view additional details. We see that 1.4% of users with a resignation date are copying sensitive content to their personal cloud. They're even copying some content to USB, right? From here, we're not just giving you the insight, but we're able to say, hey, here is something that you can do to curb this going forward. So we give you some recommendations, and right from within here, with one click, you can create a policy to address this going forward. And for this, you're able to see the various things that we will be looking out for in this policy. Of course, you can go ahead and customize this to add additional things, additional indicators to it, but I'm not going to go through here. I'm going to create a policy and show you how to create a policy from scratch. Again, over the course of this webinar, if you do have any questions, feel free to put it in the chat and we will be happy to address them. All right, so let's go really quickly to policies. And right here, like I said, you can create a policy. And what you see at the various policy templates that are available, we can identify data theft, data leakage, which my colleague Priya had kind of differentiated. But another thing that you see to the right are the various prerequisites. A lot of these are optional, but are definitely recommended. So for example, you have the ability to integrate your HR solution into Purview so that we're able to see that immediate information when someone has put in a resignation date, has been terminated, or whatnot. You can also onboard your devices directly into Purview so that we also get in that endpoint insight as well. Finally, you have the ability to integrate your physical badging tool such that if someone has been terminated and they're still trying to access the building with their badges, we can identify that as well. But if you do not have any of this, we're able to collect insight from Azure Active Directory if that user's account has been deleted. So that's another alternative that we can use today. Once you define the policy template you want to work with, go ahead and click Next. You can give this a name. right? Let's do test. We can give this a name, give it a description. Go ahead and click next again. You can then determine who are the users or groups of users that you want to assign this policy to. You can kind of exclude people as you please. Let's click next again. And here is where you define, hey, there are some contents I want you to prioritize. There are some content that are super sensitive. And if people are accessing this content, I want you to assign them a higher risk score. You can choose the locations of this content and then define in the next page, define the specific content you want us to work with. You can also choose not to prioritize the content, right? Go ahead and click next again. And here is where you choose those locations. So if there's a project you all are working on that is super sensitive and is hosted in a particular SharePoint site, you can go ahead and select that SharePoint site so that whenever people are accessing that, we can categorize that user, or we can assign rather a higher risk score to that user. We can go ahead and click next again, do the same thing for sensitivity labels. If someone is interacting with a highly confidential label, I want you to assign them a higher risk score. Same thing for sensitive information type, right? If you have defined your sensitive information type for that project, you can assign it as well to the policy. And as you might know, we have over 300 sensitive information types by default within Purview that you can take advantage of today. I go ahead and add that, click next, and then you decide how much you want to get alerted for. Do you want to get alerted for every single activity that that user is doing, or just for the priority content, right? You can pick and choose what you want. Let's click next here again. And here is where you choose that triggering event that we had mentioned earlier. So the HR connector tool, if it has been integrated, you can select that. But like I mentioned, you can also use insight from Entra ID or Azure Active Directory. Go ahead and click next. And here, if you remember at the beginning during the settings, we had turned on a few indicators, right? You can go ahead and then say, for this policy, here are the indicators that I want you to look out for, meaning here are the activities that this user should be performing for you to define that they are trying to, steal data, right? You can go ahead and pick and choose what those indicators would be across both the detections within Microsoft 365 and the third-party detections that you have brought in. Go ahead and click next. Now, one thing to call out here, the key difference with insider risk management or with a malicious attempt at data theft rather than an inadvertent one is the sequence of activities that they're performing, right? I could just be working offline today. Maybe I'm at the airport. I'm going to the airport. I'm like, you know what? I need to download a few files to work on. And that might just be, innocent of me to have downloaded a confidential file. But the moment we're seeing people perform sequence of actions, they're downloading files and then they're renaming it and then exfiltrating or downgrading the label on it, those sequence of activities would categorize a user as a malicious user or as an insider risk. And it's those sequence of activities that we want to be able to detect. So for this policy, you can choose what sequence you want us to be able to identify for those users that you've assigned to the policy. Once you kind of define that, go ahead and click next, and then you can choose the threshold that you want, meaning how much activities or things should this user be doing for you to generate an alert as low severity, medium severity, or high severity. You can also just go ahead with what Microsoft has defined as the threshold. Once you do all of that, go ahead and create your policy, and you're good to go there. But once you create your policy, what then happens is you start getting alerted on, when someone actually does these actions that you've included in the policy. And that's what we're seeing here, right? You can kind of filter to, refine what that policy looks like, what that alert rather looks like. But let's go ahead and pick someone. In this case, we have a few users who have had some high alert severities. We have some repeat offenders here. We have some first-time offenders here, as you can see with FO, right? We put offenders on first-time offenders. But let's go ahead and click on this guy or this person. And one thing you also notice here is the users have been anonymized as we are defined within our policy, or within our settings rather. So go ahead and click on this user. And we're getting this dashboard that is giving us a lot of beautiful insight on the exact risk factors for these users, right? What specific actions did this person take that has made us categorize them as an 87 out of 100 risk score. We see the various sensitivity labels they've interacted with, the unallowed domains that they've accessed. We can also see that they've accessed some sequence activities as well. We see that the triggering event here is the HR connector imported a resignation date for this user. So that was what made us kind of start looking into this user, right? We can also get some insights about the user details, which is giving you that from the Microsoft ecosystem, that rich integration within Entra ID and whatnot. We see that this user is on the executive leadership team. They're currently assigned to a Project Tiger, which might be sensitive. They're also a global administrator. They're accessing more content containing sensitive users than other users, right? We're able to get all of this insight to learn more about the users, right? On the left-hand side here, we can kind of see additional info. But we can go ahead and come here to see the specific activities that this user has interacted with, right? The sequence of activities they downloaded, exfiltrated, and then deleted. We can see that they sent some files to some unallowed domains. Those unallowed domains could be your competitors, right? Those are insights that we're able to give to you. On the right-hand side, you can kind of interact with, here we see that there was some disgruntlement in messages. So this person is probably cursing, threatening, is pretty much upset. We can kind of review that matching message, the exact message that they sent as well with our communication compliance tool, like Priya had mentioned. We can also see the types of information they're accessing. They're looking at health records for their family members. We see that they're accessing some illegal software websites. They're downloading files from OneDrive. They're doing some screenshots, captures on their devices. They're accessing some phishing websites. Basically, you can kind of see the various things that this user is doing. We can come into the user activity and see again the cumulative actions that they've taken over the past few months, 6 months from the date or before they put in a resignation date. At the bottom here, you can see what each of the colors represent. You can kind of interact with this as well to see exactly what's going on. So on the 30th of September, they renamed some files. We assigned them 32 score. On the 1st of October, they printed some files, deleted some files, etc. And we can see that their risk score continued to get higher based on the actions that they were taking, right? We can then, based on all of these insights, this user seems to be pretty suspicious. We can go ahead and assign, some other users to collaborate on the alert. We can confirm the alert to kind of start that process of investigating and making it a case. We can also kind of just dismiss the alert if we feel like it is benign, right? But in this case, I'm not going to do anything here. I have some cases that we can interact with already. So we'll come right here to cases. We can see a few of the cases that we can work with. Let's go ahead and look into this repeat offender and see what he or she is doing. We see this one has a risk score of 91. We see the various content they're interacting with. Right here in Activity Explorer, we can again see the various actions that they've taken. But we can come here to Content Explorer to actually look at the content they were interacting with, right? What Excel document were they looking at, right? What images were they exfiltrating? This might be a prototype of a new design or a new product we're creating that they're sending to that unallowed domain, right? We can kind of look at the specific files that they're interacting with. And for you to see this, it also depends on the right permissions that you have as an insider risk analyst, a compliance analyst, or whatnot. Based on all of this insight, you can go ahead and put some notes, right? And say, so that just like Priya had mentioned, with IRM, we want to make sure you can collaborate across the various teams. So you can add a case note for the next person that will be investigating this. In this case, we're adding the legal team, we're escalating to the legal team. We're also saying that there are 2 confirmed policy violations in the last 6 months, right? And from here, you can add additional contributors. You can also copy the case link and share out to your legal team. All of this information is great, but how can we then start investigating or taking actions? You can come here. You can send an email notice to the user. So if, for example, this has been confirmed to be benign, or even if it is malicious, it can send an email notice saying, hey, just a reminder of your confidentiality obligation in case you've forgotten. Here's a code of conduct reminder. You can also create your own notice templates as well to be sent to these users. You can go ahead and create a Microsoft team so that all of the people involved in the investigation can kind of collaborate and chat about it. You can also create a Power Automate flow to automate some of these processes as well. Another thing that you can do, given that Purview is that holistic solution for data security, data governance, you can create a case with our e-discovery premium solution where you can then, create a legal notice or a notice to the employee. You can put a hold on their case and kind of start searching through the content that they might have interacted with across the various communication channels. So that's something that you can do from here. Right, so once all of this is resolved, you can go ahead and resolve the case and it's all good. So let's go back again and review some other things. One other thing to call out, like I mentioned, with notice templates, you can create your own notice template that is then sent to the respective users or groups of users that you might be investigating. The final thing that I'll call out here is the adaptive protection. With adaptive protection, this is a feature that combines the functionality of Microsoft Purview IRM and Microsoft DLP with artificial intelligence, such that when we identify that a user is interacting with sensitive information and is potentially risky, maybe at an elevated risk level, moderate risk level, or minor risk level, we can dynamically assign them to a DLP policy without you having to do anything. So right here, you want to turn on adaptive protection, but you can also come here and create a policy. So let's say we want to be able to identify Canada PIPA. Come here, click next, define the admin units, define the locations, and then you can create a role saying that whenever we identify that a user is at a moderate risk level or elevated risk level, you want us to take the action of restricting their access within Microsoft 365 or auditing what they're doing on their endpoints, right? You want us to prevent them from, copying to a removable USB drive or copying or moving stuff using an RDP session, right? We can kind of pick and choose. So immediately we identify that someone is at any of these risk levels, we're dynamically assigning a policy to them. Something that we just announced with Ignite is also the ability to add additional triggers. So in defining the risk level, you can say, hey, if this person is performing this series of activities, but you can also say the moment someone gets terminated or resigns, I want you to dynamically assign this policy to them as well. So those are things that you have the ability to do with Purview. Now, that is the high level of insider risk management, but the other things that I'll call out here, and I'm going to switch to the other tenant really quickly, are how do you go ahead and connect those various tools that we talked about at the beginning, right? How can you connect your HR tool or your physical badging tool? Right here, when you click on data connectors, you can scroll all the way down. You can see the HR piece here. We can see the physical badging one here. Just go ahead and select that. And we have detailed documentations within each of these connectors that you can use to start kind of integrating those various solutions to Purview. Another thing to call out here are the roles, that there are different roles depending on the actions that you want each user or each person to take. Within IRM, you need to assign the right permissions or the right roles to them. And here is where you're able to do that. So you just come here, scroll all the way down, and you can then go ahead and select the specific role that you want to assign the specific users to that role, and then they'll be able to take those particular actions that you want them to be able to take. To round us up, let's talk really quickly about communication compliance, which is what we're able to use to detect if someone is disgruntled, sending angry messages, threatening messages within a chat, within an email, or any of the communication channels. So right here, you can create a policy to detect inappropriate content, inappropriate text, inappropriate images, and also to stay compliant from a regulatory standpoint. If there's anything you need to stay compliant with, you can identify when someone is putting something in their messages or emails that goes against that regulatory compliance. Now that brings us to the end. That brings us to the end of the demo. I'm now going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation. And this is just a slide that talks through, again, the specific roles and permissions that you need to assign based on the actions that you want those users to be able to take, or those admins to be able to take. And we will be putting a link to this also in the chat. I will now pass it over to Priya to round us up.
Thank you, Shay, for the great demo. So in this slide, we have the licensing information for insider risk management. So insider risk management is included in the E5 subscription. So if you don't have an E5, depending on your current M365 subscription, you can either get an E5 compliance add-on or an E5 insider risk management add-on, or get M365 E5, which includes our Purview components as well. So if you'd like to discuss further about the licensing, price, or get a trial license, please reach out to your account team who can help you with that. And please post any questions you have and we'll be answering them. Thank you.
All right. If there are any questions, I'm now going to stop recording. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop it off in the chat, and we'll be happy to answer. Stopping recording now.